Now, I'm working on a new theory that I guess it would be closer to physics than philosophy. And I was reading Critique of Pure Reason, and I had this idea. I'll start reading it, and then I'll just go kind of like into an explanation of what I'm trying to say here. So, do space and time pre-exist one another as subjects pre-exist the predications of their own dimensional elasticity? In other words, do they continue to unfold into further dimensions that, suffixing the fourth, that being the first and earliest dimension of time, with each further dimension extending beyond the fourth, unfolding in parallel courses, each one with the first four in linear enlarging of the first four. If this theory is true, then the fifth dimension would be as a directional elasticity of the first, extending the first and four reciprocal dimensions conceived of as points. The sixth dimension then extending these points on a graphical structure into linear lines of measure, that multiplying that of the second dimension as incubating in its own mathematical multiplicity along the extended fourth itself, mathematically incubating along the sixth. And this would be, so in other words, the first four dimensions, a point, a graph, flat surface, and then dimensional space, which is inconceivable without time, which comes after it. So how could, that's very interesting in itself, how could space exist without time? But yet we conceive it as previous to time, but yet without time it could not exist. So time actually in a way pre-exists space, and space pre-exists time. And in that same way, when we structure sentences in human dialogue, we often can reverse the predicate and the subject, the same way time and space reverse one another. So now I think I heard one time that there's 32 dimensions in actual. So and that would be 4 groups of 8 in my theory. So that you would take in every sequence of 4. So the fifth dimension would have the first incubating it into a further multiplicity, a multiplying structure. The sixth dimension would have the line of measure, so there would be 2 parallel lines of measure bringing the north, south, east, and west points that would then extend outward into the sixth, seventh dimension, which would be a spatial extension. So how would I describe this? It would have first the points at the ends of the various dimensions on the graph, and then it would have the extending into space of the 8th dimension along its own conception of space. So there would be 2 extensions of space in the 8th dimension. And then in the 9th dimension, let's see, 6th, 7th, 8th. The 8th dimension, hold on. 5th dimension would be first dimension incubating into the time and all the others, actually. And then the 6th dimension would have the graph incubating in that. And then the 7th dimension would be 2 unfolding extensions of space and wombing each other. Not only would the 3rd dimension incubate in the 7th, but probably the 7th would go incubate in the 3rd, so that the subject and the predicate of each one would come before and after in a kind of multiply, like we have multiplication and division. So it would be a reversal. Everything is reversible and extendable. And then the 8th dimension would be all of the dimensions incubating in each other, and time would be multiplied twice. And if that have, so that every 4 dimensions would bring out a further extension of each law that governs each of the first 4 dimensions. So that the first 4 dimensions would be multiplied in their structure into further dimensions along every exceeding 4 that comes after that, up to 32. And that would be 4 groups, but that doesn't really, it might be 4 times 8, 32, or it might even be 64, because they say that 8 is the perfect number. So when you get up into the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th dimension, there would be a slightly new law governing the way it expands and grows. Then that I'd have to work on to try to figure out. So I'm going to send this now to YouTube. This will be new philosophical discussions that I'll put on YouTube, along with more music and stuff. And God bless everyone, and I hope that people understand that life can be very hard, and all I'm trying to do is help other people any way I can, which is hard to do it here because there's not much you can do for anybody. And yes, I do really care. And after a while, constantly being in prison in these places wears on you, would wear on anybody. But God bless everybody. I hope everybody's staying healthy, and I'll be back with more. Next, I'll talk about metapneumonia, my own ideas about metapneumonia, and also prototypes and stuff.